Welcome to another episode of Keeping It Human, where we explore the personal and professional journeys of top professionals. Today we have Mikel Lindsaar, CEO of StoreConnect, with us to discuss his career, the challenges he's faced, and the growth of his company. Mikel is a seasoned entrepreneur in the IT sector, known for founding and successfully exiting 4 businesses. Mikel, correct me if I'm wrong, and currently
right.
manages 3.
Started 7
Wow.
and I still have 3.
3 babies still going. Amazing.
Yeah, right.
And some of his ventures include Reinteractive, MetaPulse, and StoreConnect, all aimed at enhancing business efficiency through innovative software solutions. Welcome to the show, Mikel.
Thank you, Lara. Good to be here.
Great. I can't wait to hear all about your challenges, accomplishments, and, advice for up-and-coming entrepreneurs or business leaders. So I guess we can kick off, Mikel, with an introduction to yourself and StoreConnect. So people who aren't familiar with StoreConnect, what does your company offer and who is your ideal customer?
Yeah, so StoreConnect our tagline is D2C solved. Clients or listeners might not have heard of D2C. It's direct to consumer. So there's traditional B2C and B2B, which is business to consumer or business to business. So direct to consumer is just where a company makes its own goods and sells them directly to the end user and consumer of those goods. So instead of, if you're producing, little Steve mascots, our mascot's a Tasmanian devil, and if you're producing these and you then sell them to Myer, Coles or Woolworths to resell them, that would not be D2C because you have no direct relationship with the end customer, right? Sure. So we help companies create a D2C environment where they're able to sell to their end users. And the way we do that is by providing a e-commerce and point of sale system that lives on top of Salesforce. So Salesforce is an incredibly powerful CRM, customer relationship management software, and StoreConnect installs on top of that and then publishes all of your product data and pricing data and all that sort of stuff on the web. You can run your website out of it, and it just creates an incredibly powerful platform. And we have clients from 2 people running a store, because we also do the point of sale, so businesses that have 2 staff, all the way up to very, very large companies like Sharp Electronics who use our software. So it's a very, very broad range of client.
Amazing. And I love the Tasmanian devil mascot too. Tell me...
you're from Tasmania, aren't you?
Correct, yes. And we recently got the naming rights for our AFL football team as the Tasmanian Devils. So tell me what the devil represents.
Despite Disney trying to stop you, which is just ridiculous.
I know. I heard that they didn't realise the Tasmanian devil was a real animal, and that's why they tried to put a stop to it.
That's hilarious. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Talk about out of touch.
I know. So what does the devil represent in regards to your company or your vision?
Well, it's interesting, the title of your podcast is Keeping It Human. And one of a book that my 3rd book that I'm writing is called Customer Commerce. And one of the tenets in that book is be human, right? The reason we chose a devil and a Tasmanian devil is not only is it a very Australian mascot that not a lot of organizations use, like we could have chosen a wallaby or a kangaroo or whatever, right? Like boring, or a koala. But Tasmanian devils are actually, they punch above their weight. They have an incredible grip strength for their size. They latch onto things and don't let go. They're scrappy. They get out there and get stuff done. And in a lot of cases, the clients that come to us are trying to rebuild a human connection with their customers. And that's why they're going direct to consumer. And they're finding it hard because a lot of these businesses are usually quite small. So they're getting beaten out by Amazon and all these massive retail giants that can just throw money at the problem. And they can't do it that way. They have to go the scrappy route. So it was that's how it came about. And Steve is classic. He's about to get his own travel blog. We have clients now taking action shots of him around the world. We called him Steve because that was about as Australian a name that we could think of as possible. And that The next version of Steve, actually, we just had him custom made, has a hoodie and everything. So he's pretty awesome. Yeah. Steve, it has been known, it has been reported that having a Steve can result in improved health, fitness, weight loss. Your results may vary, but it has been reported as such.
Increased workplace culture too, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's something about keeping it human, right? It's too easy in this world, especially in the modern world of business and technology, to try and reduce everything down to just a statistic or a measurement.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that human connection, if we don't have a reason that adds a bit of joy, a bit of inspiration, a bit of life, why are we working? Like, what's the point? And you have to have a reason beyond the paycheck to work. A paycheck is actually factually the lowest. Well, there's probably one motivation below that, which might be, threat of death or something. But money is like the lowest motivation there is to do work. And if your staff are just working for you for a paycheck, they're not going to stick around. They're not going to go that extra mile. They're not going to take pride in their work. Yeah. So, Steve, while, I don't expect anyone to come and work for us because we have Steve, there's an aspect of, that the company cares enough to invest not insignificant time and money into creating that culture. So I think it's important.
Absolutely. So I guess that leads well into my next question, which is about your career beginnings and, just learning about a pivotal moment in your career that influenced your professional path and the way that you run your companies.
Yeah. Look, I think, probably one of the biggest challenges / pivotal, or probably the pivotal thing that changed. I was growing up and starting businesses and working with my dad and all sorts of things. And one of the things I did was actually left all of that and went and worked as a volunteer for 10 years.
Wow.
And working as a volunteer teaches you that money is not always available. And if you don't have money available, then your only way to get the job done is by inspiration of other volunteers, right? To donate time. And what that then means is you become very, very, very aware of the value of that time of those individuals, because it's not like you can just go and spend an extra whatever to hire another person to get the job done. And this, I think, was very important for me to learn and has then provided a foundation as we expanded. In fact, the first motto of StoreConnect was time well spent, because we wanted to create a software system that helped our clients and their customers spend their time more efficiently and not waste it in bad systems and transactions and multiple data entry and all this sort of stuff. So having that fundamental and underlying volunteer work, I think, really showed me a couple of really important things, especially when it comes to human resources effectively, or hiring or managing teams, is that anything you can do to remove the stops and barriers that are preventing your team from producing is really one of your primary jobs as an executive. And if you're not in there trying to find out why the team's not producing, not because they're wrong, but because things are stopping them, right?
Yeah.
And getting rid of those, then your value as an executive is getting reduced.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting point that if you look at any activity, there will be a force or pressure to achieve a product, right? So like, we want to hit this target, or we want to hire these people, or we want to grow into this segment. There will be energy being spent to achieve that target, right? By the collective group. If that target's not being met, it means that there must be, according to like the laws of physics, if nothing else, an equal pressure preventing you from achieving that, right? And identifying what that pressure is critical for expansion. It's either going to be bad systems, bad product, no demand, like whatever it is.
Yes.
You as an executive need to find that so that your staff can excel, so that they can succeed, so that they can get their job done. And that gives them the motivation to continue and be excited. So that's what I think it taught me, the value of a team, the value of their time, and ensuring that nothing's stopping them.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, you get so, I know I'm guilty of it myself. You get so caught up in doing the doing that you end up with the blinkers on, and, the opportunity to make a change gets missed until it's nearly too late. So, yeah. It's a balance,
that's why you need to have regular conversations with your team.
Yeah.
And have a culture that lets people talk. Like, one of the things I do in every meeting, if I'm in a group, because I'm usually in my own company, I'm usually the most senior person there effectively, right? I mean, it's what it is. I own the business, or a vast majority of it in the case of StoreConnect. So when I'm asking for opinions, or when something is being voiced and we need to get data from all the team members, I always make sure I start with the person who considers themselves the lowest on the ladder, right?
Yeah.
So if you have myself, one of my reports, their report, and their report, like 4 people down, I'll start with the bottom first and get them to voice their opinion first, and then come back up. Because what happens otherwise, if I voice my opinion, no one else is going to dare voice a contrary one. Right?
Yeah.
And it's a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I've reflected on this show a couple of times, but I attended the Stephen Bartlett Live event in Melbourne. He's from Diary of the CEO, and he integrated a small change, but yet such a powerful one in their interviewing process. And it was similar to what you just said. After a panel interview, he has his staff leave the room immediately and complete simple 5-question questionnaire about the interviewee. Then they come in and discuss what they wrote. So it's their valid opinion and they're not being swayed. And I just think, those very small changes can make such a huge impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Doing panel interviews can be a challenge these days with the remote, but you can do the same thing on Zoom or Teams or whatever. You just say, everyone, disconnect, go write your report, be back here in 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about overcoming some challenges? So what have been, I guess, some of the biggest challenges you've faced in your career, especially during the launch of StoreConnect and the difficult times around, COVID and all that?
Yeah, the big C word.
C word.
Yeah. What an insanity demonstrated on a global level, that the crazy things that happened during that period were just truly eye-opening. But for me, I mean, just before COVID, we were launching StoreConnect, and I was building it as an initial business. And the year before COVID, or like 6 months before COVID hit, I had a major death in the family, and then the sales were down because my attention was off the ball, and the finances were going a bit rocky, and we're like, okay, I can pick this up. I can fix it. I'll fix it in February. And then COVID, boom. I'm like, okay, well, that plan no longer works. And that was in a very interesting situation, because I was in a services business that sold software development. And one of the first things that everyone did was cancel every project. And would have been the same in hiring, like all these things. Just everyone went, we're not doing nothing.
Yep.
And our revenue just absolutely tanked.
Yeah.
So handling this death in the family, handling the lack of revenue prior to COVID, and then COVID, it was a challenging time. And one of the things I really felt like I needed to do, rightly or wrongly, was not let any of my team go, because, I mean, could you imagine trying to look for a job during COVID? Like, it was just not going to happen. So there was some government support, which was helpful, but it was nowhere near enough for what we needed, given the amount that the things had tanked. And so, I ended up working with my wife, and we took out massive interest-only loans on our house and mortgaged everything to the hilt, so that we could keep our staff employed for that whole period. And we proudly didn't let a single staff member go throughout all of COVID. And I think, keeping it human, again, that's not that from a purely financial point of view, that was stupid. From a, just purely numbers, can I afford to do this? No. That was the answer. I spoke to 3 or 4 financial consultants and they all said, you can't afford it. You have to fire everyone. I'm like, can't do that.
It's not an option.
Yeah, but it's paid back longer term, because those team members now know that I will go through an awful lot to make sure that they're looked after. And it also meant that as things started recovering, we had a team.
Yeah.
They were in place. They knew what they were doing. And we were able to take on the work that started returning, 6-9 months later. Yes. So that was a pretty challenging time and a bit of a defining moment, as an executive. And firing people is the worst part of any job. If you have a boss that enjoys firing people, I highly recommend you to look for another job, because that person's got some issues. Let's just put it that way.
They enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's probably one of the toughest challenges I've gone through, where it's been how do we actually respond to this?
Yeah. Well, good on you and your wife for believing in the mission, and your team as well.
Mostly my wife for dealing with the stress, let's be honest.
I bet.
But, she backed me. And that's also part of why I married her, aside from many other things, is, that you need a team, you need that support, you need that stable house. That's a very important thing as an entrepreneur or a business owner, or even a lead of a section or a division, is get your house in order. You should have, and you need to have, a stable foundation in order to succeed. And that means making time for that part of your life, and taking that time to spend the half hour at breakfast reading to your 6-year-old daughter, even though there's a meeting that needs to happen shortly and you haven't finished preparing for it. All of this is very, very important. And again, if you don't do it, why are you doing it?
Yeah. And it's so easy to get caught up, but you've got to go back to your why. And most of the time we go out on our own to be able to have the flexibility and the time, right? And if you're working 20 hours a day and ignoring those important to you,
why are you bothering? I don't know if it was on your LinkedIn feed or not, but I saw a post recently, I think it was yours, that said you have 1,440 minutes a day. Why not use 60 to follow your dream?
Yeah.
And the same can be said to why not use 60 to make sure you enjoy it. It's just 100%. Put that time in. It doesn't have to be lots. It just needs to be consistent, and you need to be available for the times when it's important.
100%. Does your wife work within your company?
Yes and no. So for a period while we were bringing up, my wife's a chartered accountant. I mean, she's incredible. And for a period while we were bringing up my daughter, we tried to minimize any work that she did just to the family office. Sure. She is now that my daughter's getting a bit older, my wife's now able to invest some more time into the business itself, but she's a paid employee and paid market rates, and that's just how it works. We try and keep that at a business level, and then when we're home, even though we both work from home, which again is also a challenge, we make sure that we're home. And if we're going to work, we go to an office and we talk about it there, or we allocate some time and say, okay, we're now going to talk about blah, so that we can change our hat, right? Because everyone wears a chef's hat or a train conductor's hat or whatever. You've got a hat that you're wearing as a business owner. Take that off, put on your husband hat or put on your wife hat or whatever it is you're wearing. Have that conversation on that hat and then switch it back. And that also helps reduce stress flowing between the hats, which is also very important.
Yeah. And creates balance for your daughter as well, so they know they've got mum and dad, not
that's right, not CEO and blah blah. Yeah.
100%. Okay, and what about mistakes, or if we're keeping it human, fuck ups, muck ups, whatever you want to call them? What valuable lessons have you learned from these issues that have cropped up along the way?
I think the biggest thing that every entrepreneur kids themselves with, me no exception, is maybe probably two things. There's thinking that you know the answers all the time because you have a gut feel or whatever. And in many cases, you should just act on those in many cases, because by far it's more effective to do something than nothing. Even if this something doesn't quite turn out to be correct, you would have learnt in the process, right? So action is always better than inaction. So with that caveat, the next thing is assuming that you know what the answers are without actually looking or inspecting or asking. And I've had my fair share of situations where I was positive that ABC was the answer, went ahead and built it or did it, and then found out from customers that it was actually XYZ and that they had no interest at all in ABC, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say the number one tip for a business owner or a head of a division or whatever is talk to your end users. Now, you might not have an external end user. They might be internal. That's fine. Like, you might be company division to division or whatever, but get out there and ask some questions of your end users. Test your hypotheses, test your assumptions, and actually get those answers back. The second one is, as a business owner, early on in the piece, I didn't have sufficient financial control on my business. And so tax bills and things became as a surprise as opposed to a predicted expenditure. Yeah. And this is a really important thing for a business owner, is that all of your tax bills, everything that you pay the government, can almost be worked out to the dollar at the start of the year, right? Yeah. Before you're even earning them. So you can actually work that into your cost basis. And if you're not thinking with that, and you get $10,000 in from a customer and you go, wow, I just made, it cost me $7,000 in materials. I just made $3,000 profit. And you go and spend that, you are doomed, right? Yes. Because it's not 3,000 profit because you didn't include the tax. And setting that aside and having that in a non-touchable bucket. And if you can't resist touching it, just pay it to the tax office as soon as you get it, and then get a big refund at the end of the year, right? Yeah. That would be, like, from a smaller entrepreneur business holder point of view, that was a really tough lesson for me to learn. And, it took me many years to resolve it once I'd learned it, because, you got to get back up to current and do everything. And happily where we've done that, where the Australian taxation office love us right now. I'm still looking for my Christmas card, but anyway, I'm sure I'll get one day. But yeah, that's probably a very tactical error. Yeah. But that also comes back to assuming you know the answer, right? You need to inspect. You need to look at data. Yes. And I guess one thing on that is data is different to, like, the data that you care about have to be facts. Yes. You're not cared about opinions or filtered data or, data that contains insanities like omitted time or when, altered sequences or things like this, or falsehoods, right? You need actual data. And the only way you can get that is by looking with that data, analyze it, compare it to the situation, and then make a decision. Yeah.
Fantastic. And that's really solid advice, coming out from a bigger lens and really look down at the clear data. So
set your targets, set your goals, set your objectives, be bold, be brave, get into action. Yeah. But take a little bit of time to validate those assumptions as soon as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about when people talk about breaking certain stigmas? What advice would you give to someone looking to break the stigma or defy generational conditioning in their professional life?
I really look at, I guess, well, if you look at what generational conditioning is, it fundamentally comes down to what people have told you in one way or another, through society or directly, the way that you should be or behave or act or achieve, right? Yeah. So those are data or datums coming into you. And you need to look at those and analyze them for veracity. Like, are they actually true?
Yes.
another aspect of that is have a look at which ones of those you've actually internalized and accepted as true without really inspecting them, because those ones become false ideas or fixed ideas that you have that you then operate on, right?
Yes.
If you got brought up in a situation where you were told by everyone around you that police can't be trusted, right? I mean, it's an extreme example, but let's say that that's what you were told. Police can't be trusted. You will go through life, if you've adopted that as a fixed idea, maybe not getting in trouble with the law, but say something bad happens to you, you won't call the police, right?
Yeah.
And so it might turn into something bigger. Or you've been told that people like you can never get a job like that, right?
Yes.
Well, that's a fixed idea. If you're then operating on that fixed idea and you look at that job and go, I'd really like that job. But people like that little voice that says, people like you can't get a job like that. If that's appearing in your head or you've got something similar, that's a fixed idea. Yes. So have a look at that little saying and go, well, where did I get that from? Who told me that datum? What were they wearing? Where was it? What time was it? You know, how old was I? Where was I sitting? Where were they sitting? Like really try and look at that datum and figure out where it came from. And as soon as you do that, your power over that datum will increase because you're analytically looking at it as opposed to reactively experiencing it, right?
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful thing. And as soon as you analytically look at it, you can then go, well, is that true? Have I ever seen anyone of my blah, blah achieving blah? And I guarantee you, if you go look, you'll find someone that's done it, right? So then you go, well, obviously that must be a fixed idea. It's false.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the generational change or the generational conditioning. In our modern world, we're taught to be victims.
Yes.
And there's a status now, bizarrely, in being a victim. It never used to really be that way. But in the modern times, there's almost a benefit of being a victim. But the challenge with that is, and I say that with all understanding that there are actually victims out there that have actually had it tough. You know, I get it. I've done huge amounts of charity work. I've done huge amounts of not-for-profit work. I donate a lot of money to charities and causes. So I appreciate that does exist. But what I'm saying is that there are a lot of very, 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 very able people out there that
with a victim mindset,
being conditioned to be a victim, right?
Yeah.
And that's a fixed idea. You don't have to be a victim. You can exceed and excel. And I highly recommend you do so. You are far, far, far more capable than you'll ever permit yourself to believe. And tapping into that is the truest power there is.
Love it. So can you share the story of StoreConnect's growth? What were some of the key milestones and strategies that have contributed to its success?
Hiring great people is one. You know, we've always tried to get people that are highly motivated and production oriented. They want to produce well. We've created a business that works with partners to get our product installed. So we don't do all of our own installations and things, where we work with other companies to do it or directly with the client to do it themselves. So we're building up an ecosystem around us. And then also connecting up with a very large organization as a strategic alliance, you know. So Salesforce, they're a massive organization, and we're able to, I wouldn't necessarily say ride on the coattails, but be swept along, you know, and enjoy that momentum. We still have to do a lot of work for it. It's not like it's all free, but there's a lot of activity there that we can take advantage of and grow into. It has its challenges as well, because it means there's a lot of people doing that. So there's a lot of noise that we have to overcome. But I think it's getting the right people on the right jobs, building up an ecosystem, keeping it real, having a Steve.
Having a Steve.
Your listeners are not allowed to have I mean, they can go to our website and get a Steve. That's fine. But yeah, Steve is ours. You can have Daryl or whatever other name you want. But yeah, you know, having these clear moments. One other really important thing that we've done is really focused in on our brand and real diving deep on what that brand is and really embracing it. So if you think about a brand, our chief branding officer, David Breyer, is like an amazing, he's the king of branding. He's incredible. And he defines branding as the art of differentiation, which is a really interesting way to look at it. It's how do you appear different to everything else? How do you appear unique when you might not necessarily be at a fundamental level? Like, you're a talent agency. How many talent agencies are there? It's not like the talent agency aspect is unique. So what is it about your business that is unique? What is it about you that can be different? And then really embracing that. And we've done that, and that's really helped us as well.
Incredible. And we've touched on work-life balance in regards to making sure work is in the workroom, home is at home. What other tips or advice do you have for maintaining a work-life balance while running a growing company or something like StoreConnect?
I don't know that. I think I don't have a work-life balance. But I think there's two ways to approach this. It's like, I need a work-life balance because I'm being a bit of a victim, or I need a work-life balance so I can be causative over it and expand, right?
Yes.
And if it's the latter one, that's way better, right? You want to run your business and run your life. And one of the ways that I think that's makes easier to do that is through really loving what you do and believing in what you're doing. That's very important, because if you're at something that is destroying your soul and you're doing it for no real reason except a paycheck, for whatever aspect that is, it's going to make your home life a lot harder, because you come home demotivated, you come home stressed. I also appreciate that it's not necessarily easy just to find something you love. I mean, I delivered pizzas. I did not enjoy that. That was not an awe-inspiring role in my life, and I did it because I needed the money, right? Yeah. However, the reason I did it, aside from the money, is to build up enough of a cash reserve to do something else. Now, if you're doing it like that, then that pizza job suddenly becomes motivational, because you're able to reframe that soul-sucking job into well, if I do it for this period, I'll achieve blah. So the work-life balance aspect comes down to, do you have an overarching purpose or goal that you're trying to achieve? Yes. And that is a very, very critical thing. My wife and I talk about our goals often, and we meet regularly, informally, formally, whatever. It's just like we're talking about, okay, if we do that, then we can do this, and then that can be achieved, and how can we get there, and how much a week can we do over here, and what can we do with that, and oops, there's that debt that's a bit high, how are we going to pay that down? And so we strategize on these goals, and then the business and our work in the business becomes an enabler to having a happy family life, you see? So if you reframe it that way, work-life balance becomes a lot more easy, because your work is assisting you with your life. And really, when you look at work, what is it? It's like, it should be play with a purpose, right? It should be you're doing something that you enjoy with a purpose that you're going to achieve something. Leisure would then be play without a purpose. It's just like laying on a beach. You're like, well, the purpose is enjoying yourself, but you know what I mean? There's no clear goal. Yes. So I would do that. The second thing is, so make sure you have a clear purpose and a reason for working. And then the second one is consciously making time for the family. Yeah. My daughter does not mind that I work hard and work long hours, because she knows that at any time she needs me, she can come to my office door, and she opens my door and looks at me, and she makes sure that I'm not in the middle of a meeting or a phone call. Yeah. And as soon as she sees that, she knows she can come up and ask me a question, right? Yeah. And she's also learned that if I'm busy, I'll say, can you please come back in 5 or 10 minutes? And she goes, okay, Dad. And off she runs, because she knows in 5 or 10 minutes that I will give her that attention, and I'll purely focus on her during that attention. I won't be distracted with something else. Yes. So I think they're the two main ways to do it. Have work with a purpose, and consciously make time for the family. And, be there when you're there. Don't be at work when you're with the family, and don't be with the family when you're at work. Have those as different mental states. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got 2 young kids myself, and they have only known me to be working a lot, again, for a purpose, and also working from home throughout quite a substantial period of their younger years. So they were very well trained to understand, when mum needs
Mummy's
quiet.
on the phone right now. Yep, that's right.
And even now, having the flexibility and the beauty to attend things, but they also understand that leading up to school holidays, I do extra time in the business so that we can go and do some nice things together.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And if,
Yeah.
kids are not stupid.
No.
Kids get it. And the worst thing you can do is try and hide all of that from the kid. Just give them the data. Mummy's working because we want to make sure that we have nice things and we can do blah, and get their buy-in on it. Don't try and pretend or think that they're too stupid to learn.
Yeah,
kids are just...
We're talking about a trip to Japan.
They're not
as
adults.
A family
they
at
need
the moment.
guidance.
And,
they need help. They need context.
I mentioned to my son...
They're very intelligent.
Yeah. I mentioned to my son that perhaps we can bring the trip to Japan 12 months earlier. And he mentioned it to my husband because they don't forget a thing, right? And he said, mum said we can probably go to Japan next year instead of the year after if she works really hard. And then he looked at me and he said, so go on, get to work. And it's those little moments,
exactly.
that you realize they totally understand. And
yeah, they do.
In their own way, they're so supportive. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and the last question for you, Michael. So, I feel very privileged that you've chosen to come on Keeping It Human. You have been on several podcasts and interviews before. So how has sharing your story and insights on these kind of platforms impacted you personally and professionally?
Good question. I believe that the thing that I get most out of these podcasts is helping me. Well, one, it helps other people, right? That's good. But from a purely selfish point of view, it forces you to critically evaluate and look at the actions that are actually producing the positive outcomes that you're after, because you're trying to frame them in such a way that someone else can understand. And it might be something that you do instinctively, right? And you don't really know why you do it until you sit down and review it. And I think that's one of the reasons I love doing these podcasts, because you get into a situation where you're able to go A, B, C, D, and previously you might have only thought of D. You haven't had the chance or opportunity to look prior to it. And a good interviewer will prompt you into analyzing things and looking at stuff and coming up with data. Because, I come into these interviews, sometimes I get questions, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get questions and it morphs into something completely different. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's like what the conversation is. But highly recommended to anyone that feels like they have something to share, do that. I think there's a danger in it becoming a bit self-serving, but as long as you're looking at what is it that I actually do and what can I bring to the table that can help someone spend, 20 or 30 minutes of their life, and to whomever's listening at this point, thank you, thank you very much. But if you can do that, that's great. And it is also a little bit of giving back, as a race of humanity, we've managed to succeed and grow through the ages through sharing knowledge and data. And without that sharing, we would still be in trees somewhere. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I do it too. So thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your journey and insights with us today. I left this conversation feeling really inspired in regards to resilience and growth, and making some subtle changes in my business as well. So I look forward to following StoreConnect and seeing what you achieve next.
Thanks, Alara, and you too. Speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.